or heard something about the Facebook newsfeed changes which are going to be rolled out over the next few months. These newsfeed changes are actually related to bringing more content from your friends and family into the feed and sort of deprioritizing content from brands. The announcement itself is called Bringing People Closer Together. And just to sort of take the first paragraph, it's quite interesting. Facebook was built to bring people closer together and build relationships. One of the ways we do this is by connecting people to meaningful posts from their friends and family in newsfeed. Over the next few months, we'll be making updates to ranking so people have more opportunities to interact with people they care about. So this feed update really is, I think, more of a step change than we've seen in the past. We're definitely not we're not unused to seeing Facebook newsfeed tweaks and changes over time. We saw actually very recently at the end of December a tweak that was pushed through around sort of deprioritizing engagement bait, so content where you ask people to do a certain thing, so like this post, share this post, comment here, etc. So anything where you're actually trying to lead the consumer or the fan down a path to do something they might not otherwise have done, that's kind of what they would consider to be engagement bait, and that's something they will be deprioritizing over time. Previously, before that, they talked about sort of addressing the clickbait issue on Facebook, and actually, I think they did a fairly good job with that. But that took a lot of content out of the feed where people were sort of using various tactics like misleading thumbnails, etc., to get people to click on their posts and drive traffic outside of Facebook. Now, the announcement itself is relatively ambiguous. We were kind of left with questions about kind of what impact this would have on things like ads and boosting. There was then an article that came out on Wired where they spoke to Adam Mosseri and kind of looking at kind of what this impact or how this will impact video in the feed. And he made the distinction that Facebook ads is a separate thing to what this newsfeed tweak is about, which kind of gives credence to the idea that this feed change is really around how how the signals and content sort of affect the organic reach of a post. So certainly we've seen organic reach generally sort of declining over the years. I think that we're going to see quite a big correction in terms of organic reach. I wouldn't necessarily say organic reach is completely dead, but if it's not completely dead, it's definitely on life support. And if you're running content on Facebook and not promoting it, not putting any investment behind sort of serving that to the right audience, then I think this change in particular will be fairly painful for you. Generally speaking, again, we have to remember that as marketers, we're sort of pushing content through a platform which we don't own. And yes, we can pay for reach, we can pay for certain things on it, but we are at the behest of Facebook and how they want to sort of move this product in the future and kind of what they want to do with it. And I think it's a really important thing for me is I would definitely get well acquainted with the newsfeed values. If the newsfeed values isn't something that you're familiar with, definitely go and Google it, find out what it is. It's basically a set of guidelines which Facebook have put together. I think it was the back end of 2016, maybe early 2017. I can't remember exactly. But basically, just a set of values which sort of say this is kind of what the newsfeed is all about. It's all about friends and family. Sort of, the content from your friends and family should always come up first. And anything else should really be there. It should inform you. It should sort of tell you about something or educate you, or it should entertain you, something to kind of give you a bit of a smile on your face over lunchtime. So any kind of content that you're pushing out through Facebook, if it isn't falling in line with the newsfeed values, then you should probably kind of look at how you can sort of move it to a place where it does. That I think is generally a good practice to do to make sure you're doing over time. Now, we did see at the back end of last year, a post came out on The Verge about how Facebook as a platform was exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that was really about how they grew Facebook in the early days. The ex-exec from Facebook said, "I think we have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works." And Facebook did respond to it, and they said that this is that's a Facebook of old, this is the Facebook of new. We're kind of making positive steps to make sure that we're not doing anything negative or kind of impacting people's lives in a bad way anymore. Which I think is amazing, because firstly, it's an admission that Facebook were at some point aware of the fact that they were using psychological techniques to kind of grow their fan base, grow the user base on Facebook. But secondly, the fact that they even responded to this thing in the first instance is quite astounding. I think when we look at kind of this whole thing as a whole and kind of ask ourselves the question of what does this actually mean, I think there are a few things that are kind of coming out for me. There's going to be less video in the feed. We've seen that already from some of the people that have kind of spoken out from Facebook. That means that if you're publishing a lot of video, or if you're relying heavily on video, you're probably going to see less organic reach, certainly for your videos. And even if you're just promoting it, you'll probably see your cost of video views probably going up. Like I said, organic reach is probably dead, if not dying, and very much on live support. If you're relying on organic reach as a way of reaching your audience, then that's probably something you need to definitely address very, very, very soon. Look at how you can target your audiences that you want to reach in a very tactical way, but make sure you're actually spending money on the platform. Otherwise, you're kind of talking to an empty room. The cost of video views will probably go up, but just generally speaking across the board, the cost of serving ads on Facebook is going to go up. There's a good article on Stratechery, which is Ben Thompson's blog, which talks briefly about kind of the cost of ads and how something like this probably won't actually hurt Facebook's revenue in terms of actually how much money they get from the ads that they sell, which by and large shows that the cost of ads is probably going to go up for us, even if the actual number of ads being served goes down. Definitely worth checking that article out. And actually, as you know, Facebook and Instagram, and there's also a post that came out recently on the Pigeon letters. This isn't a verified source, but there are some interesting points on here about how the Instagram algorithm could be shifting as well. And that's even to that end, we're looking at sort of things like not responding to comments or getting involved in the conversations that happen on your Instagram posts could be seen as a negative signal, and so that might mean that your content gets served to less people out of your fan base on Instagram. So there's a lot of things changing. But I think as long as the content you're producing is in line with the newsfeed values and you're effectively serving that content to the audiences that will be interested in it, then I think that probably the impact of this change will be smaller than everyone is perhaps saying at the moment. But certainly keep an eye on your metrics, keep an eye on the reach you're getting, and kind of take a view as to what the impact of this will be before you actually start changing everything around. I hope that's been useful. Got any questions, do let us know. If not, I will see you later. Cheers. Bye.